Fish and Wildlife,
That's Mike Livingston here.
Department of Natural Resources,
Lenny Young, present.
Utilities and Transportation Commission,
Stacy Brewster, present.
for local government and optional state agencies for the Horse Heaven Project, Department of Agriculture,
Eric Sanderson, present.
Benton County, Ed Brost, for the Badger Mountain Project, Douglas County, for the Watoma Solar Project, Benton County, Dave Sharp, Washington State Department of Transportation. Oh, thank you, Mr. Sharp. Washington
Paul Gonseth, Washington State Department of Transportation. We appear to have lost audio again.
We heard that.
if that.
I just heard some audio from Andrea.
Yeah, I'm thinking that we constantly have to unplug and replug in the USB, which is not ideal. Can you hear all of this, Joan?
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to continue working on it though, so hopefully we won't have to continuously do that. So one more moment. Apologies for the wait.
Ms. Grantham, I think maybe what we can do with the roll call is not call through all the facilities. So we will just note people are here as we go through our agenda.
Sounds good. And do you want me to still call all of the staff?
No.
Okay.
I think we're good. And I did see Elizabeth Osborne on chat. Ms. Osborne, can you?
Yes. Can you hear me, Chair Drew? My audio
Yes.
was out when I think my name was called, but I heard a few people after me, so it chimed in via chat, and now I'm hearing you.
Great. So we didn't hear from our Badger Mountain representative, and I think I saw her name here. Let's just make sure we get all the council members.
Okay. Yes, I'm seeing in the chat that Jordan Julio is present.
And we didn't hear from Mr. Brost.
We did not.
Um,
We may have lost audio again. It went quiet.
Can you hear us now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so Chair Drew was concluding the roll call.
Chair, you are muted again.
Hello, this is Kathleen Drew. Can you hear me on the audio?
Yes.
Okay, I've turned on my Teams microphone and I'm not using the room microphone. Would you ask, Ms. Grantham can't share her screen. Joan, can you share the screen from your computer?
Yes, I didn't have the document pulled up, but I will get that up shortly. Are you able to see the document now?
We can, Joan, but we cannot hear you. Or well, the room cannot hear you.
Hmm.
So I am back on. We were discussing the issue here in the meeting. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay. If they can hear me, I'm going to continue. Okay. Council members, can you hear me?
Lenny Young, I move we adopt the proposed agenda.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Matt Childs, I move we second the proposed agenda.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 So if you mute yourself, then this will pick you up. Okay, we'll try that.
Chair Drew, I can't hear you.
I was.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
It helps when you unmute. Okay, let's get back to business here. Before us, we have the August 16th, 2023 monthly meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Lenny Young, I move to approve the minutes.
Thank you. Second?
Stacy
Brewster,
second.
Okay, second. Oh, I do have one correction. On page 34, line 13, the word council, capital COUNCIL, should be the word council, COUNSEL. Are there any other changes to the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor of adopting the August 16th monthly meeting minutes, please say aye.
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 Opposed? The minutes are adopted. Okay, thank you. We're moving on to the operational updates. Kittitas Valley Wind Project. Ms. Randolph?
Good afternoon, Chair Drew, council members, and staff. For the record, this is Sarah Randolph, Site Specialist for Kittitas Valley. The facility update is provided in your packet. There were no non-routine updates to report. Any questions?
Thank you. Moving on to Wild Horse Wind Power Project, Ms. Randolph?
Hello again. For the record, this is Sarah Randolph, Site Specialist for Wild Horse. The facility update is provided in your packet. There were no non-routine updates to report. Any questions?
Thank you. Chehalis Generation Facility, Mr. Smith?
Good afternoon, Chair Drew, council members and staff. This is Jeremy Smith, the maintenance manager at the Chehalis Generation Facility. I have nothing non-routine to note for the month of August.
Thank you.
Is there any questions?
Thank you. Grays Harbor Energy Center, Mr. Sharon?
Chair Drew, this is Sarah Randolph. I'll be speaking for Grays Harbor. The facility
go ahead.
update is provided in your packet. There were no non-routine updates to report.
Thank you. Columbia Solar?
Good afternoon, Chair Drew, FSEC council members and staff. This is Thomas Cushing, asset manager for the project. The facility updates are in your packets. There are no non-routine updates to report.
Thank you. Columbia Generating Station, Ms. Nahara Paxton?
Good afternoon, Chair Drew, FSEC council members and staff. This is actually Mary Ramos reporting for Energy Northwest. Felicia Nahara Paxton is unable to report for Energy Northwest today. I only have one item to report for Columbia Generating Station and no non-routine items for WNP 1 and 4. So for Columbia Generating Station on September 13th, Energy Northwest attended the Washington State Department of Ecology Resource Damage Assessment Committee, and this was a pre-assessment screening regarding the June 2023 oil leak into our circulating water system. This event was reported for Columbia Generating Station back in June. During the meeting, Energy Northwest provided information regarding the event summary, including the efforts we made to recover the oil from the circulating water system, the implementation of a pollution prevention and mitigation strategy, and the collaboration with Ecology and FSEC from the day of the discovery until we restored our blowdown operations and discharge to the river. The Ecology RDA Committee voted to apply the compensation schedule that's established in the Washington Administrative Code 173, 183. And Energy Northwest has the action to work with the RDA committee to provide additional information. For example, we've already provided to Ecology the information we received from Greymar, which was our contractor for recovering the oil. We submitted the documentation that we received from Greymar as far as the estimated amount of oil that was recovered. Are there any questions for me?
Mr. Young?
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the follow-up and the additional information. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. Moving on to Goose Prairie Solar.
Yeah, good afternoon, Chair Drew, FSEC Council and staff. So for the record, this is Jacob Chris, Senior Project Manager with Brookfield Renewable, providing the Goose Prairie Solar update. So we don't have any non-routine updates. The construction updates on the site right now, so we're continuing with our substation build out and foundations. Our mainline road and branch roads are under construction, and our PV array grading has commenced in the northwest area of the project. I do have one public outreach update I want to provide. So Brookfield, along with our contractor PCL, we've procured 6 defibrillators for the city of Moxie police cruisers, along with a monetary donation for first responders for that area. We plan on holding an event at the project site sometime in late October. So when I have more details, I can work with Sarah to provide those details. And that's all. Any questions?
Thank you for that. Are there any questions from council members? Thank you. High Top and Ostria project updates. Ms. Randolph.
Chair Drew, council members and staff. For the record, this is Sarah Randolph, site specialist for High Top in Austria. FSEC staff are coordinating with the certificate holder on pre-construction plans and schedules. Any questions?
Thank you. Thank you. Whistling Ridge, Mr. Caputo. Ms. Hofgemeyer.
Can somebody on the line confirm whether or not you can hear me?
I can hear you.
Thank you, Chair Drew and council members. For the record, this is Amy Hofgemeyer. I will be providing the update for Whistling Ridge facility this afternoon. On September 12th, 2023, FSEC staff issued notice for the informational hearing to be held the evening of October 9th. Subsequently, we received feedback from interested parties and accompanying public records requests that staff are working to respond to. In review of this information, as well as legal guidance from our AG, FSEC staff will be rescheduling the October 9th hearing into 2 separate hearings to be held at a later date. The separate hearings will address each request from the certificate holder individually. There will be one meeting to take comment on the request to transfer ownership pursuant to Washington Administrative Code or WAC 463-66-100, and a second hearing to take comment on the request to extend the term of the site certification agreement pursuant to WAC 463-66-030 and 463-66-040. Staff will be reaching out to the council for availability for these hearings, and the rescheduled hearings will be noticed to the public once details become available. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions for Ms. Hofgemeyer? Thank you. Moving on to Desert Claim project update, Ms. Moon.
Good afternoon, Council Chair Drew and council members. This is Amy Moon providing a project update on Desert Claim. As reported in previous FSEC council meetings, the Desert Claim Site Certificate Holder EDF Renewables submitted a proposed amendment to the project Site Certification Agreement, or SCA. This proposed amendment is for an extension of the substantial completion date from November 13th of 2023 to November 13th of 2028. The current signed site certification agreement authorizes the certificate holder to construct the project such that substantial completion is achieved no later than 5 years from the date that amendment number 1 was approved by the council on November 13th of 2018. FSEC held a public informational meeting on July 13th of 2023 for the requested amendment to the Desert Claim SCA. We received 1 written comment against the project. The FSEC Assistant Attorney General reviewed the proposed amendment request and prepared a legal advice memo for your review. And at this time, I will turn this council update over to Amy Hofkemeyer, who has additional information on the request from the certificate holder. Amy?
Thank you, Ms. Moon. For the record, again, this is Amy Hofkemeyer. At request, FSEC staff have prepared a recommendation on the Desert Claim Extension Amendment. Staff recommends the council vote to approve the certificate holder's request for extension for reasons I will now describe. The language in House Bill 1812 states it is the policy of the state of Washington to reduce dependence on fossil fuels by recognizing the need for clean energy in order to strengthen the state's economy, meet the state's greenhouse gas reduction obligations, and mitigate the significant near-term and long-term impacts from climate change while conducting a public process that is transparent and inclusive to all, with particular attention to overburdened communities. In considering the intent described by this language, staff feel that this facility would be in alignment with the goals of HB 1812. However, this alone is not sufficient for staff to recommend approval. In review of this particular request, staff recognizes that this developer appears ready and able to proceed with construction as soon as they secure a power purchase contract. Additionally, the project went under an FSEC public comment process and supplemental environmental impact statement with their project redesign in 2018, and have actively been competing in requests for proposals for contracts and expect more in the near term. Staff recognize that while the certification is not new, the project appears to have been active in the interim and have concluded that an extension would be more appropriate than termination and requiring the certificate holder to submit a new application under which to proceed. The 2018 amendment request was reviewed under the State Environmental Policy Act during the review process prior to council approval. However, this review was limited to changes in the proposal rather than the entirety of the project. Therefore, FSEC staff would like to recommend the following provisions associated with the recommended approval in order to ensure that the required mitigation are still protective of environmental standards and conditions. The following recommendations are intended to account for potentially changed conditions in the project area, industry or agency practices that have evolved since the initial certification, and information that has become available since the 2018 amendment of the project. The council has indicated previously that an unlimited build window is not appropriate. In light of this, staff recommend that the resolution contain language that caps any further extension requests beyond the current request. Any further extension requests would not be allowed unless construction is reasonably underway, but may not reach the definition of substantial completion. Given the new state requirement that the project apply for the construction of the ADLS towers, and I'm sorry, I can't remember what that acronym stands for, but it's the lighting on the turbines. There is potential for additional impacts associated with this installation. Additional SEPA analysis would be required associated with the installation if FAA approved, which may result in additional or altered mitigation. Post-construction monitoring for wildlife carcasses is set at a minimum of 1 year. Currently, FSEC is generally requiring 2 to 3 years as a minimum to reduce the risk of an outlier year skewing results. Staff recommend that these post-construction monitoring timelines be reviewed for potential extension in alignment with current practices when the developer submits required pre-construction habitat and vegetation plans for review. This monitoring would be incorporated into the scope of the Technical Advisory Committee, or TAC. The staff recommend that the resolution require applicant provide with their waste management plan a commitment to recycle project components when possible. And to circle back, the ADLS stands for Aircraft Detection Lighting System. So for those of you who are new to that. And then lastly, the certificate holder's most recent site layout included turbines located less than half a mile from 7 non-participating residences. Staff recommend the certificate holder consider the feasibility during micrositing of placing all turbines more than half a mile from non-participating residences to avoid dominating views from these sensitive viewing locations. And staff would recommend this review be submitted to the council. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Hofkemeyer. Are there any questions from council members?
This is Stacy Brewster. On Ms. Hofkemeyer's last point, staff would recommend that they consider feasibility. Is there any teeth behind that? Is there a requirement to that extent, or is it a request?
I think we have some flexibility on how we word that recommendation. We could indicate that they would be required to review and provide justification for any turbines that they would need to feel be placed closer than half a mile.
Thanks.
Any other questions or comments from council members? I do also want to add, just for the public, that the reference to House Bill 1812 was a legislative bill that was passed in 2022 and went into effect a year ago. So it's now part of FSEC's statute, for those who are not familiar with that reference. Is there discussion among council members about the recommendation from staff to draft that? How does the council want to go with this in terms of drafting a resolution? I see someone with a hand up, and I need to know who that is. Lenny, Mr. Young, go ahead.
Yeah, could I ask for clarity on what it is we'll be voting on today? Are we voting on an extension or a conditional extension, provided that the applicant adopts and accepts the staff recommendations?
If it's the will of the council, we can vote on, direct the staff to develop a resolution for our next meeting, which includes the conditions that they have laid out in the memo we received this morning, and that Amy has verbally, Ms. Hofkemeyer has verbally stated to the council in this meeting.
So we'd be, well, if we go down that path, we'd be asking for a resolution to vote on that it goes beyond simply granting the requested extension, and it adds some staff recommendations as conditions of that extension. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions or discussion? I also think that there are some items that were referred to for background in the applicant's or the certificate holders memo concerning statewide law that has been passed as well, which includes the requirements for renewable energy and for clean electricity that we can add to the background that the staff will provide to us. Okay, I didn't. Okay, thank you. So is there a motion to direct staff to determine whether the certificate holder is willing to modify? So here's, I have gotten some specific language for us to consider. To direct staff to determine whether the certificate holder is willing to modify its request to include the proposed conditions, and if so, to prepare a resolution granting the requested amendment subject to the proposed conditions.
Lenny
That's
Young, so
further.
moved.
Thank you, thank you. And second?
Stacy Brewster, second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay. Opposed? The motion is adopted, and so the staff will determine whether the certificate holder is willing to modify the request, and if so, prepare a resolution granting the requested amendment subject to the proposed conditions. Thank you. Moving on to the Horse Heaven Wind Farm project update. Ms. Moon.
Thank you, Chair Drew. Again, for the record, this is Amy Moon providing an update on the Horse Heaven Wind project. FSEC staff continued working on the preparation of the final environmental impact statement, or final EIS, by incorporating public comments, agency outreach, tribal consultation, and mitigation development. This effort includes working with Washington State agency subject matter experts on the impact analysis and fine-tuning recommended mitigation opportunities to publish the final EIS. FSEC staff are working closely with our consultant, WSP, to update the affected environment and analysis of potential impact sections to reflect public comments, agency input, and current information. FSEC staff have also been working with the applicant to better understand and prepare for their submittal of an updated post-adjudication application for site certification. The applicant is required to submit application amendments, which shall include all commitments and stipulations made by the applicant during the adjudicative hearings. These updates to the application are due within 30 days after the conclusion of the hearings per Washington Administrative Code. That would be WAC 463-60-116. As we prepare to issue the final EIS, FSEC staff have reached out to confirm whether council members would prefer a hard copy or an electronic copy of the final EIS. So get back to Andrea or Joan, I believe. We are also coordinating with subject matter experts to be available to answer council questions when we present the final EIS to the council and the public. We currently anticipate that this presentation will happen at the October council meeting. We will notify the council and the public as details are finalized. Lastly, staff are working to schedule deliberative meetings for the council following the adjudicative hearings that concluded on Friday, August 25th. Following these discussions, the council will prepare the adjudicative order to then be used along with the final EIS in developing the recommendation to the governor. Does the council have any questions?
Are there any questions for Ms. Moon? Okay, thank you for the update. Moving on to the Badger Mountain project, Ms. Snarsky.
Thank you, Chair Drew, and good afternoon, council members. For the record, this is Joanne Snarsky, the siting specialist for Badger Mountain Solar. Progress continues to be made on the development of our draft environmental impact statement. We have made significant strides on the review of the natural resource sections with our contracted agency partners. These include the Departments of Ecology, Fish and Wildlife, and Natural Resources. At the previous council meeting, staff identified that we were working with the Department of Archaeological and Historic Preservation, Department of Natural Resources, the Yakima Nation technical staff, and Colville Confederated Tribes technical staff on review of the revised draft of the Cultural Resources Survey Report. In conclusion of this coordinated effort, staff have determined that additional survey work is needed, and we are coordinating with our consultant to prepare for this additional activity. Our goal is to complete this work and incorporate the findings into the draft environmental impact statement. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Ms.
This is Jordan Julia with Douglas County. I had a question about the timeline on the draft EIS. I saw that there's a proposed extension, and it looks like the estimated completion is about a year out. Is that an average timeline for this process?
I was going to address that next. If you would like to wait till after I provide an explanation and you still have a question, we could go forward from that.
Yes, no problem. Thank you.
Sure.
Go ahead, Ms. Snarsky.
And if there's no questions, moving on to the extension request. In your packets, you will find the request received by the applicant dated September 6th. This request is for 18 months. This timeline was coordinated between staff and the applicant. This extended time period is to ensure that we can complete the remaining cultural resource survey work and incorporate it into our draft environmental impact statement. This timeline is also inclusive of issuance of the draft EIS and the subsequent public comment period, the adjudicative proceedings that must occur, issuance of the final EIS, and ultimately the council's recommendation to the governor. Also, just as a point of process, this letter was available to the public for review and comment last week. There were no comments received on this extension request. How about questions?
Questions for Ms. Snarsky? Ms. Julio? Does that answer your question?
Yes, that's fine.
Because it is more than the draft EIS. It's the rest of the process that will include the EIS and as well as the adjudication.
So my question was actually referencing in that letter, it estimates the issuance of the draft EIS in third quarter of 24, which is about a year away. So that was my question is that an average timeline for developing a draft EIS? I understand that the full extension is for much more work than that. But, this is my first time through, and I just was, asking for clarification if that's a normal timeline, or I know we've had a lot of work on the archaeological side that's been discussed. So that was more my curiosity and request for clarification.
I'll ask Hofgemeyer to give more detail there.
Thank you, Chair Drew. This is a little bit longer than we initially anticipated. However, given the timing of the additional field work, we do have concerns about completing this additional survey work and being able to get out into the field with fall and winter approaching. The nature of this survey is that if there is snow on the ground, we cannot be in the field. The resources we're trying to identify would not be visible. And so this timeline is inclusive of potentially needing to wait until snow has cleared up to be able to complete this work. And so it is intended to be inclusive of potential issues like that.
Does that answer your question? Do you have further questions?
Nope, that completely answers my question. Thank you.
And I believe that if we do get done earlier, then we'll issue it and move more quickly. So I think we would all be, that would be a good thing for all of us. Thank you. So before us is the request for the extension. You've heard the description from staff and the reasons for the timeline. Is there a motion to accept the extension request for an additional, the Badger Mountain Solar Energy Project application to be extended an additional 18 months to April 7, 2025?
This is Mike Livingston. So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Eli Lovett, second.
Eli Lovett, second. Discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? The motion is adopted. Thank you. Moving on to the Watoma project, solar project update, Mr. Caputo.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Drew and council members. For the record, my name is Lance Caputo. I am the siting specialist assigned to the Watoma Solar Energy Project. The applicants for the Watoma Solar Energy Project recently submitted their draft supplemental cultural resource survey requested by FSEC and the Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation. We are presently reviewing the report for compliance. If we receive concurrence from DAP, we will prepare a SEPR threshold determination. May I answer any questions?
Are there any questions for Mr. Caputo? Thank you. Moving on to the Hop Hill Solar Project update, Mr. Barnes.
Thank you, Chair Drew and council members. For the record, this is John Barnes, FSEC staff for the Hop Hill application. Update for August. We are continuing to coordinate and review the application with our contractor, contracted agencies, and tribal governments. Our Assistant Attorney General is working on a legal brief for the land use consistency to be provided ahead of the October council meeting. There are no other updates to report on. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Barnes? Thank you. Moving on to the Carriger Solar Project update, Ms. Snarsky.
Thank you, Chair Drew and council members. For the record, this is Joanne Snarsky, the siting specialist for Carriger Solar. Prior to last month's council meeting, in accordance with the revised Code of Washington, or RCW 80.50.090 sub 3 sub A, the FSEC director notified the applicant of the intent to issue a determination of significance under RCW 43.21C. Also, in accordance with RCW 80.50.090 sub 3 sub A, the applicant is allowed to provide clarification or make changes to the proposal to mitigate the anticipated environmental impacts. We are currently working with the applicant regarding possible changes for the FSEC identified items of significance, which are the cultural resources and viewshed aesthetics, while they develop their formal response to the director's notification. In addition to ongoing meetings with the applicant, FSEC has determined that it will be necessary to further inform our SEPA determination regarding cultural resources to contract with the Yakima Nation Cultural Resources Program to have them complete a confidential traditional cultural properties study. The scope of this work is currently being coordinated with the Yakima Nation. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions for Ms. Snarsky about these items for Carriger Solar? Thank you very much. And with that, I apologize for our technical difficulties throughout, but we have completed our agenda for today. So thank you all for your participation, and we are adjourned.